Greg studied the pattern, his expression troubled. Are you certain? This could be natural phenomena mimicking structured communication. I've run every analysis possible, Lena insisted. These are deliberate transmissions using frequency-hopping patterns developed by human military forces before the quarantine. My grandmother taught me to recognize them. Greg leaned back in his chair. At 67, his hair had turned gray and lines marked his face. What are you suggesting, Lena? That humans survived somewhere beyond Confederation space? That they're coming back after 3 centuries? I don't know, she admitted, but something is coming. Something that knows human communication methods. Greg was silent for a long moment. The Council won't believe this. You know how they are. They built 3 centuries of history on the assumption that humans are extinct. Then help me prove it, Lena said. I need access to a long-range scout vessel. If I can get closer to the source of these signals. Impossible, Greg interrupted. The Council would never approve such a mission based on these findings. They'd call it a waste of resources at best and dangerous speculation at worst. Lena's frustration showed on her face. So we do nothing? Wait until whatever is sending these signals arrives at our doorstep. Greg sighed and activated his communication console. I can get you time before the Regional Science Committee. It's not the full council, but it's a start. Present your findings and let's see where it goes. 3 days later, Lena stood before the Regional Science Committee in their chamber on Nexus 7. 7 representatives from different species sat in a semicircle, their expressions ranging from boredom to mild curiosity. She had spent hours preparing her presentation, making sure every detail was perfect. Distinguished committee members, she began. For the past 3 months, I've been detecting unusual communication patterns originating from beyond the Cygnus Arm. These patterns match human military protocols developed before their extinction. A Taurian representative snorted, a sound like distant thunder. Dr. Marsh, we are all aware of your fascination with your partial human ancestry, but to suggest that humans who have been extinct for 3 centuries are suddenly communicating from beyond explored space seems far-fetched. I'm not necessarily suggesting they are humans, Lena clarified, though in her heart, that's exactly what she believed. But something or someone is using human communication methods. Perhaps you miscalculated, suggested an Aldarian member, her voice soft and musical. These could be natural phenomena that coincidentally resemble structured communication. Lena displayed the signal patterns on a large screen. The probability of natural phenomena mimicking these specific frequency hopping patterns is less than 1 in 10 trillion. These are deliberate transmissions. For the next hour, Lena presented her evidence, answered questions, and defended her findings. By the end, she was exhausted but hopeful. Some committee members seemed genuinely concerned. We will consider your findings, Dr. Marsh, said the chairperson, a Medusan whose thoughts rippled visibly through its translucent body. But without more concrete evidence, we cannot justify any significant action. As the committee filed out, Director Powell approached her. You did well, he said quietly. But they won't act on this. Not yet. Lena nodded, her determination undiminished. Then I'll find more evidence. 1 month later, the Raxon mining colony in the Cygnus Arm went silent. The Confederation sent investigators, expecting to find technical failures or perhaps a local disaster. Instead, they found an intact but completely abandoned facility. 5,000 colonists had vanished without a trace. No signs of violence, no emergency transmissions, nothing. The only clue was that all communication systems had been precisely disabled. 2 days after that, a science outpost in the Hydra sector went dark in the same manner. Then 3 more systems within a week. Panic began to spread through the Confederation. Emergency meetings were called. Defense forces were mobilized. And in her laboratory on Nexus 7, Lena Marsh received an urgent message from the Science Council requesting her immediate presence. As she packed her research materials, her communication console chimed. An incoming transmission from an unknown source. Lena hesitated, then accepted it. The screen remained dark, but voice came through, clear, human, and using an accent she had only heard in historical recordings. Dr. Lena Marsh, said the voice. Your grandmother was Alice Marsh of Earth Colony Proxima Centauri. Lena froze, her heart pounding. How do you know that? We've been watching, listening, waiting for the right time. The voice paused. We're coming back, Dr. Marsh. Humanity is coming home. The transmission ended, leaving Lena standing in stunned silence as the stars continued their eternal dance outside her window, witnesses to a history about to change forever. The Confederation Council chamber was in chaos. Representatives from 87 worlds shouted over each other as news of another disappeared colony flashed on the main screen. In 6 weeks, 7 settlements had gone silent. Tens of thousands of people had vanished without explanation. Lena Marsh sat quietly in the observer section, watching the panic unfold. Since receiving that mysterious transmission in her lab, she had been brought to the Confederation capital on SciFiPrime as a special advisor. Her warnings, once dismissed, were now being taken very seriously. Order! We will have order! Bellowed Council President Xantu, his massive fists pounding the podium. The chamber gradually quieted. This is not a time for panic, but for action. We have assembled our finest minds to determine what is happening. His eyes found Lena in the crowd. Dr. Marsh, please join me on the platform. Lena felt hundreds of eyes on her as she made her way to the center of the chamber. Many looked at her with suspicion. Her partially human features now seemed ominous rather than merely exotic. Dr. Marsh has been tracking unusual communications that may be related to these disappearances, President Xantu explained. The Council has authorized a special investigation fleet to be dispatched to the edge of the affected region. A tall, lean figure stepped forward from the shadows beside the platform. Captain Eli Norwood of the exploration vessel Starlight will lead this mission, Xantu continued. Dr. Marsh will accompany him as scientific advisor. Captain Norwood nodded at Lena. He had the distinctive blue-tinted skin of the Altarian people, but his eyes were dark and intense in a way uncommon for his species. Lena had read his file. Born on a frontier world to refugee parents, educated in the finest Confederation academies, with noted interest in pre-Confederation history, particularly human military tactics. We depart in 6 hours, Norwood said, his voice calm and measured. My crew is already preparing the ship. As the council meeting dissolved into smaller discussions, Captain Norwood guided Lena toward the exit. We should talk privately, Doctor, he said quietly. There are aspects of this mission not suitable for the council chamber. They walked in silence through the grand corridors of the council building, passing nervous government workers and military personnel rushing in all directions. Outside, the capital city of New Alexandria spread out before them, a gleaming metropolis of crystal towers and floating gardens. It was hard to believe that such beauty existed while at the edges of Confederation space. Entire colonies were vanishing. Norwood led her to a small, secure room in the military wing of the complex. Once inside, he activated privacy shields and turned to her with a completely different expression, one of barely contained excitement. You believe it's humans, don't you? He asked without preamble. Lena hesitated. I received the transmission. I know about the transmission, he interrupted. What I want to know is what you truly believe. Off the record, between us. She studied him carefully before answering. Yes, I believe humans survived somewhere beyond Confederation space, and I believe they're coming back. Norwood smiled for the first time. Good, because I believe it too. He moved to a wall panel and pressed his palm against it. A hidden compartment opened, revealing a small metal box. From it, he withdrew an ancient, worn book made of actual paper. This belonged to my great-grandfather, he explained, handling the object with reverence. He was a collector of human artifacts. This is a military strategy manual written by a human named Sun Tzu, thousands of years old. Lena's eyes widened. Such an artifact should have been in a museum, not in private hands. Listen to this passage, Norwood said, carefully opening the fragile book. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. He looked up at her. The colonies that have gone silent, no signs of battle, no destruction, no casualties that we can detect. Just empty. You think they're following these strategies? Lena asked, I think whoever is responsible studied humans very carefully, he replied. Or they are humans, using their own ancient wisdom. 6 hours later, the Starlight broke orbit from Centauri Prime. It was a sleek vessel, the pride of the Confederation exploration fleet, equipped with the latest technology and staffed by an elite crew of 30 specialists from various worlds. On the bridge, Captain Norwood settled into the command chair, while Lena familiarized herself with the science station. The main view screen showed the blue-green jewel of Centauri Prime falling away as they accelerated toward the stars. Set course to the Theta 9 system, Norwood ordered. Maximum safe speed. The navigator, a young Proximan named Sora, inputted the coordinates. Course laid in, Captain. Estimated arrival in 27 hours. The Theta 9 system? Lena questioned. That's not where I detected the signals. No, Norwood agreed, but it's where the pattern of disappearances is leading, if we project the sequence of colonies that have gone silent. Theta 9 is the most logical next target. The journey passed intense preparation. Lena spent hours analyzing the communication patterns she had detected, looking for any message hidden within them. The crew ran combat drills and sensor sweeps, preparing for whatever they might encounter. Captain Norwood divided his time between tactical planning and studying his collection of human historical texts, looking for insights. As they approached the Theta 9 system, Norwood called the senior staff to the briefing room. Theta 9 is a small mining colony with approximately 2,000 residents, he explained, displaying a holographic map of the system. They extract rare minerals from the asteroid belt. The colony itself is built into the largest asteroid, with automated mining operations throughout the belt. Any response to our communications? Asked Commander Varen, the first officer. None, Norwood replied, which could mean they've already suffered the same fate as the others. We'll proceed with caution. Full sensor sweeps as we enter the system. Shields at maximum. The staff nodded grimly and returned to their stations. The Starlight dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Theta 9 system. Immediately, the sensor officer called out, Captain, multiple energy signatures detected near the colony. On screen, Norwood ordered. The view screen activated, showing the asteroid belt in the distance. Around the largest asteroid, the mining colony, hovered 5 vessels of unfamiliar design. They were angular, with sharp lines and dark, non-reflective surfaces that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. No match in our ship identification database, reported the tactical officer. They're approximately twice our size, but their energy signature is unusual. I've never seen anything like it. Are they detecting us? Norwood asked. I don't think so, sir. We're at extreme scanner range, and they appear focused on the colony. Lena stared at the strange ships, a chill running down her spine. Can we get a closer look? Not without risking detection, Norwood replied. But we can try to enhance the image. The view screen zoomed in on one of the vessels. As the image cleared, they could make out markings on the hull, symbols in no language currently used in the Confederation. But Lena recognized them instantly. That's English, she whispered, an old human language. The bridge fell silent as the implication sank in. Captain Norwood's face showed a complex mix of emotions, vindication, excitement, and concern. What does it say? He finally asked. Lena squinted at the markings. UEA Defender. I think UEA stands for United Earth Alliance. It was a political entity humans were forming just before the quarantine. Before anyone could respond, the sensor officer called out again, Captain, the ships are moving. They're leaving. On the screen, the 5 vessels turned away from the asteroid colony and accelerated smoothly. In seconds, they had disappeared, jumping to faster-than-light travel. Set course of the colony, Norwood ordered. Let's see what they left behind. The mining colony of Theta 9 was intact but completely abandoned, just like the others. 2,000 people had vanished without a struggle. Food remained on tables. Tools lay where they had been set down. Environmental systems continued to function perfectly. The only difference was that here they had arrived soon enough to witness the ships responsible. As Lena walked through the empty corridors with the away team, She noticed something unusual about the colony's computer systems. They're still operating, she observed, but all communication systems have been precisely disabled. And look at this. She pointed to the main colony database terminal. Someone downloaded the entire population registry. They're collecting information, Norwood said thoughtfully. But why? And what are they doing with the colonists? Their investigation was interrupted by an urgent call from the Starlight. Captain, we're detecting an enormous energy signature at the edge of the system. Something big just arrived. Norwood ordered an immediate return to the ship. As the away team rushed back to their shuttle, Lena's portable scanner picked up a faint signal. The same communication pattern she'd been tracking for months, but much stronger and clearer. Back aboard the Starlight, the bridge view screen showed a terrifying sight. Emerging from the darkness of space was a vessel of impossible proportions. It dwarfed the Starlight, stretching over 5 kilometers in length. Its design matched the smaller ships they had seen earlier, but this was clearly something else entirely. A flagship or command vessel. Defensive positions, Norwood ordered calmly. But do not power weapons. Let's not appear hostile. The massive ship came to a stop, hanging in space like an artificial moon. For several minutes, nothing happened. The crew of the Starlight held their breath, waiting. Then came the transmission. Confederation vessel, said a clear, human voice over the communication system. This is Fleet Admiral Susan Bell of the United Earth Alliance. Lower your shields and prepare to receive a delegation. We have returned to reclaim what is ours. Lena and Norwood exchanged looks of shock and wonder. After 3 centuries of absence, humanity had returned to Confederation space, and they had brought an Armada with them. Captain Norwood stood rigidly at the airlock, his blue skin a shade paler than usual. Beside him, Lena Marsh tried to control her racing heart. They were about to meet actual, living humans, something neither of them had ever expected to experience. Lowering shields in designated section, reported Commander Varen over the comm system. Their shuttle is approaching Docking Bay 2. The crew had spent the last hour in frantic preparation. News of the human vessel had been transmitted to Confederation headquarters, throwing the entire government into crisis. Emergency sessions were being held. Defense fleets mobilized. But here on the Starlight, Norwood had made a decision. They would meet with a human delegation peacefully. Remember, Norwood said quietly to the small reception committee, no sudden movements, no aggressive postures. We represent the Confederation in this historic moment. The airlock hissed and began to cycle. Lena held her breath as the inner door slowly opened. 3 figures stepped through. They wore dark uniforms with silver insignia that matched the markings on their ships. 2 were clearly security personnel, alert and watchful, with compact devices at their hips that Lena suspected were weapons. Between them stood a woman of average height, with short gray hair and piercing eyes. Fleet Admiral Susan Bell, she introduced herself, her gaze moving steadily from one face to another. United Earth Alliance. Norwood stepped forward. Captain Eli Norwood of the Confederation vessel Starlight. This is Dr. Lena Marsh, our scientific advisor. Admiral Bell's eyes lingered on Lena. You have human ancestry, she observed. My grandmother was human, Lena confirmed, her voice barely above a whisper. Bell nodded. There will be many like you. Bridges between our peoples. She turned back to Norwood. Captain, we have much to discuss. Is there somewhere we can speak privately? Norwood led them to the ship's conference room. As they walked through the corridors, crew members stopped and stared openly at the humans. For most, it was like seeing legends come to life. In the conference room, Admiral Bell dismissed her security personnel with a subtle gesture. They took positions outside the door, leaving Bell alone with Norwood and Lena. I understand this is shocking for you, Bell began once they were seated. Humanity was believed extinct for 3 centuries. Now we return with technology beyond anything in the Confederation. Where have you been? Lena asked, unable to contain her curiosity. How did humans survive the quarantine? The plague. A shadow passed over Bell's face. There was no plague, Dr. Marsh. That was a story created by the Confederation Council to justify our removal from galactic society. Norwood frowned. What are you saying? 300 years ago, humanity was advancing too quickly for the comfort of many Confederation species, Bell explained. Our adaptability, our innovation, it frightened the established powers. The Council voted in secret to exile humans from galactic society. Lena shook her head in disbelief. That can't be true. The historical records were altered, Bell interrupted. A careful campaign of misinformation convinced the galaxy that humans had died out. Meanwhile, those of us who escaped the quarantine retreated to uncharted regions, building and evolving away from prying eyes. Norwood leaned forward. If what you're saying is true, why return now? Why not earlier? Or later? We needed time, Bell said simply. Time to build, to develop technologies that would ensure we could never be exiled again. And as for why now, she paused. We detected signs of a threat to all organic life in this galaxy, something the Confederation is unaware of. Before she could elaborate, the ship's communication system activated. Captain, came Commander Varen's urgent voice. We're receiving priority transmissions from Confederation Command. The Council is demanding your immediate report. Norwood excused himself, leaving Lena alone with Admiral Bell. You're part human, Bell said after a moment of silence. What do you know of your human heritage? Very little, Lena admitted. My grandmother told me stories, taught me some English words, showed me pictures of Earth. But the human side of my family history feels more like mythology than reality. Bell's expression softened slightly. Earth still exists, Dr. Marsh. It was never destroyed, merely isolated. The United Earth Alliance now spans hundreds of systems beyond Confederation space. And the colonies that had gone silent. Lena asked, what happened to those people? They were evacuated, Bell answered, peacefully. We offered them a choice, remain in Confederation or join the Alliance. Many chose to come with us, especially those with human ancestry, however distant. You can't just take Confederation citizens, Lena protested. We offered a choice, Bell repeated, something the Confederation didn't give humanity 3 centuries ago. The door opened and Norwood returned, his expression troubled. The Confederation Council has ordered us to detain you, Admiral Bell, pending their arrival. A defense fleet is on its way. Bell smiled thinly. That would be unwise, Captain. My flagship is only one of hundreds in the Alliance fleet. We didn't come to start a war, but we are prepared for one if necessary. What exactly do you want? Norwood asked directly. Recognition, Bell replied. The truth about our exile to be acknowledged, and the return of human worlds that were stolen from us. She stood up. I should return to my ship now. The choice is yours whether to try stopping me. Norwood made no move to interfere as Bell walked to the door. This isn't the end of our conversation, Admiral. No, she agreed. It's only the beginning. News of humanity's return spread through Confederation like wildfire. Markets crashed, religious cults sprang up overnight, and defense forces were placed on high alert. The Council tried to maintain calm by describing the human vessels as unknown entities under investigation. But leaked reports from the Starlight had already revealed the truth. Meanwhile, the Starlight remained in the Theta 9 system, observing the massive human flagship. More Alliance vessels had arrived, forming a fleet of over 50 ships. The Confederation Defense Force, when it arrived, kept its distance, outmatched both in numbers and technology. In her quarters, Lena pored over historical archives she'd downloaded from the Starlight's database. If Admiral Bell was telling the truth, there should be inconsistencies in the records, signs of alteration. What she found disturbed her deeply. The official record stated that the human plague had begun on Earth in the year 2731 by the old calendar. But cross-referencing multiple sources, Lena discovered that reports of plague only appeared after a closed council session that same year. Before that meeting, human representatives had been actively participating in Confederation politics, with no mention of any disease. A soft chime interrupted her research. Come in, she called. The door slid open to reveal a human she hadn't seen before, not one of Bell's delegation. He was tall and thin, with dark skin and intelligent eyes. "Dr. Marsh," he said, "my name is Eric Jones. I'm with Alliance Intelligence. May I speak with you?" Lena glanced at the security camera in the corner of her quarters. "Don't worry," Jones said, following her gaze. "Your surveillance systems are experiencing a temporary malfunction. How did you get aboard?" Lena asked, alarmed but curious. "We have technologies the Confederation hasn't encountered yet," he replied, "including methods of transportation that don't require conventional shuttles." He sat down across from her, without waiting for an invitation. "I understand you've been researching the truth about humanity's exile. Admiral Bell made claims I wanted to verify," Lena said cautiously. Jones reached into his pocket and withdrew a small device, which he placed on the table between them. It projected a holographic document that looked ancient, yellowed and worn around the edges. "This is the original Council directive," he explained. "Resolution 47B, dated March 15th, 2731. It authorized the complete removal of humanity from Confederation space under the cover story of a fictional plague." Lena stared at the document, reading the signatures of council members, many from species still represented in the current government. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because we need allies within the Confederation," Jones said simply. "People who will help spread the truth. The Council is already preparing a narrative that we're imposters or genetically engineered weapons created by some unknown enemy of Confederation. What happens now?" Lena asked, "Will there be war?" Jones's expression darkened. "There are those within the Alliance who want exactly that. General Peter Reeves leads a faction that believes the only justice is the complete dismantling of the Confederation that betrayed us." He paused. "Admiral Bell favors a more moderate approach: recognition, reparations, reintegration. But she's losing ground to Reeves every day we face Confederation hostility." A alert sounded throughout the ship before Lena could respond. "All senior staff to the bridge immediately," came Norwood's voice over the communication system. Jones stood up. "That's my cue to leave. Consider what I've told you, Dr. Marsh, and what side of history you want to be on." He touched the device on his wrist and simply vanished, leaving Lena staring at empty space. On the bridge, Norwood and his officers watched in growing horror as the main view screen displayed a new arrival in the system, a Confederation battleship, moving aggressively toward the human fleet. The Indomitable. Norwood identified the ship, Grand Marshal Frick's flagship. "What is he doing?" "He's ordering the human vessels to power down and prepare for boarding," reported the communications officer. "Sir, this is outside the Council's instructions. They wanted containment, not confrontation." "Hail the Indomitable," Norwood ordered urgently. "Tell Fricks he's making a terrible mistake." But before they could make contact, the massive human flagship began to move. It positioned itself between the Indomitable and the smaller Alliance vessels. "Energy spike from a human ship," called out the tactical officer. The Indomitable fired first, a full barrage of conventional weapons that streaked toward the human flagship. Everyone on the Starlight's bridge held their breath. The weapons never reached their target. They simply vanished about 100 meters from a human vessel's hull, as if they had never existed. Then the human ship responded, not with weapons fire, but with a pulse of energy that washed over the Indomitable. The Confederation battleship went dark, all systems apparently offline, drifting helplessly in space. "No casualties detected," reported the Starlight sensor officer in amazement. "They just turned it off." Norwood's communication console lit up. Admiral Bell's face appeared on the screen. "Captain Norwood," she said gravely, "please inform your council that we have disabled but not destroyed the Indomitable as a demonstration of our capabilities and our restraint. We did not come to wage war, but we will not be treated as enemies." Her eyes were hard. "The next Confederation ship that fires on us will not receive such gentle treatment." The screen went dark, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. The galaxy had just changed forever, and Lena Marsh realized she stood at the very center of a gathering storm. 3 days after the disabling of the Indomitable, the Confederation Council declared a state of emergency. Across 87 worlds, Citizens prepared for what many believed would be the first interstellar war in over 5 centuries. Military vessels were recalled from their patrols. Civilian ships were commandeered for evacuation purposes, and ancient defense systems were reactivated. The human fleet had grown to over 200 vessels, positioned at strategic points throughout Confederation space. They made no aggressive moves, but their presence alone was enough to cause panic. More colonies reported mass disappearances as human ships appeared in their systems. On SciFiPrime, the Confederation capital, Captain Norwood and Lena Marsh had been summoned to an emergency council session. The Grand Council chamber, normally ordered and dignified, now resembled a war room. Military officers hurried between stations, and the central holographic display showed the positions of both Confederation and human vessels. Grand Marshal Thrix, his massive Taurian frame even more imposing in full military regalia, glared at Norwood as they entered. The commander of the Indomitable had been rescued from his disabled vessel, but the humiliation of being so easily neutralized by the human ship had left him furious. "Captain," he rumbled, "I understand you had extended contact with the human leader before my arrival." "I did, Marshal," Norwood replied evenly. "Admiral Bell came aboard the Starlight for preliminary discussions." "And you failed to detain her," Thrix accused. "With respect, Marshal, attempting to detain her would have been suicidal. We had no idea of their capabilities until you discovered them firsthand." Before Thrix could respond, Council President Xantu called the session to order. The various representatives took their seats, their faces grim. "The situation is unprecedented," Xantu began. "After 3 centuries, humanity has returned with technology that far exceeds our own. They have made no direct attacks, but their actions, disabling the Indomitable, removing colonists from our worlds, constitute violations of Confederation sovereignty." The Aldarian representative spoke up. "Had we verified their claims about their exile? Could these actually be humans who survived the plague?" A uncomfortable silence fell over the chamber. President Xantu looked to an elderly Medusan in formal robes, Archivist Villan, keeper of the Confederation historical records. "Archivist," Xantu prompted, "what do the records tell us?" Vielon's translucent form shimmered with anxiety. "The official records clearly document the human plague and subsequent quarantine. However," he hesitated, "certain inconsistencies have come to my attention. There are gaps in the record, particularly surrounding the council session of 2731. "What sort of gaps?" pressed the Proximan representative. "Minutes from key meetings are missing. Medical reports that should exist do not. And there are signs that some documents may have been altered after the fact." The chamber erupted in shouting. Xantu pounded his podium for order. "Are you suggesting, Archivist, that the humans may be telling the truth? That the Confederation exiled them under false pretenses?" Before Vielon could answer, the chamber doors burst open. A communications officer rushed in, his face pale. "Mr. President, we've received a direct transmission from a human flagship to all Confederation worlds simultaneously. They bypassed our communication controls. It's being broadcast everywhere. The main screen in the chamber activated without command." Admiral Bell's face appeared, calm and resolute. "People of the Confederation," she began. "I am Fleet Admiral Susan Bell of the United Earth Alliance. For 3 centuries, you have believed that humanity perished from a mysterious plague. This was a lie created by your government to justify our exile." The screen changed to show historical documents, the same ones Eric Jones had shown Lena in her quarters. "These are the original council directives ordering our removal," Bell continued in voiceover. "Humanity was advancing too quickly. Our innovation threatened the established order. Rather than compete with us, the council chose to eliminate us." The screen returned to Bell's face. "We did not die. We retreated beyond your borders, built our own civilization, and now we have returned. Not for revenge, but for recognition. We demand acknowledgement of the truth, reparations for our stolen worlds, and a place in the galactic community that was denied to us." The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. Grand Marshal Thrix was the first to recover. "Propaganda," he thundered. "Designed to divide us. to weaken our resolve. But Lena could see doubt on many faces. The humans had provided evidence that matched the inconsistencies the archivist had found. If they were lying, it was an extraordinarily well-crafted lie. Marshal Thrix, President Xantu said carefully, "What is your assessment of our military position?" Thrix's expression darkened. "Troubling, Mr. President. The human vessels appear to possess defense systems unlike anything we've encountered. Their ability to completely neutralize the indomitable without destroying it demonstrates technology centuries beyond our own. Could we defeat them in direct conflict?" The Marshal hesitated, clearly uncomfortable admitting weakness. "Not with our current forces. Perhaps with time to study their technology, develop countermeasures." "We don't have time," interrupted a new voice. All eyes turned to find a human standing at the chamber entrance. He wore a simple gray uniform with minimal insignia, but carried himself with unmistakable authority. General Peter Reeves. He introduced himself. United Earth Alliance Military Command. Guards moved to intercept him, but Reeves raised a hand. Around him, the air shimmered, and 4 more humans appeared, armed with sleek, unfamiliar weapons. "I come under flag of truce," Reeves said calmly. "My security detail will remain passive unless threatened." President Xantu recovered from his shock. "How did you enter this chamber? This entire building is secured. Your security measures are based on technologies we surpassed centuries ago." Reeves replied dismissively, "I could have brought an entire battalion if I wished." He strode to the center of the chamber, ignoring the hostile stares. Unlike Admiral Bell, who had appeared diplomatic and measured, Reeves radiated cold intensity. This, Lena realized, was the hardline faction Jones had warned her about. "Admiral Bell believes in diplomacy," Reeves announced. "I believe in reality. And the reality is this: you cannot win a war against us. Your most powerful weapons cannot touch our vessels. Your most secure facilities cannot keep us out. Your most advanced sensors cannot detect our movements." He gestured, and a holographic display appeared in the air before him. Detailed schematics of Confederation defense systems, military deployments, even emergency protocols being implemented. "We know everything about you," he continued. "Your strengths, your weaknesses, your secrets. We could have destroyed the Confederation the moment we arrived, but we chose not to." "What do you want?" Xantu asked, his voice hoarse. "The same as Admiral Bell. Truth, reparations, recognition. But my patience is considerably thinner." Reeves fixed his cold gaze on the council. "You have 48 hours to acknowledge the true history of our exile, begin the process of returning human worlds to our control, and establish formal diplomatic relations with the Alliance. And if we refuse?" Grand Marshal Thrix demanded. Reeves smiled thinly. "Then I will demonstrate what happens when humans truly go to war." The chamber fell silent again. Lena could see the council members' faces shifting between fear, anger, and resignation. Humanity had returned not as supplicants, but as conquerors with overwhelming force. The Confederation's choices were limited. "This isn't right," she found herself saying, stepping forward. All eyes turned to her, including Reeves' cold stare. Forcing the Confederation to submit under threat is injustice. It's just repeating the same mistake in reverse. "Dr. Marsh," Reeves said, studying her with new interest. "Half human, if I recall correctly. Your grandmother was Alice Marsh of Proxima Colony. How could you possibly know that?" Lena asked, unsettled. "We never stopped watching the Confederation," Reeves replied. "We tracked every human descendant, every mixed blood child. We knew exactly who remained behind." Before Lena could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the chamber. The central display flickered and changed to show a new threat. Dozens of unknown vessels appearing at the edges of Confederation space. These ships were unlike either human or Confederation design, their forms strange and unsettling. "What is this?" Xantu demanded. "More of your fleet, General?" Reeves frowned, studying the display. "No," he said, his voice suddenly urgent. "Those are not Alliance vessels." The communications officer rushed back in. "Mr. President, the unknown vessels are attacking both Confederation and human outposts." We're receiving distress calls from 7 systems simultaneously. On the display, they watched as one of the strange ships engaged a human vessel. The fight was brief but violent. The human ship's seemingly invincible defenses failed against the newcomer's weapons. It exploded in a burst of light. Reeves touched the device on his wrist. His cold composure shattered. Reeves to Alliance Command. Priority Alpha. They're here. Who's here? Norwood asked, stepping forward. Who are they? Reeves looked at the Confederation Council, his expression grave. The real reason we returned. The Silicate Collective, a machine intelligence that has been infiltrating organic civilizations for millennia. We discovered them 30 years ago, attempting to penetrate Alliance space. Why didn't you warn us? Thrix demanded. Would you have believed us? Reeves countered. Or would you have seen it as a trick, a justification for our return? He turned back to the display, watching as more battles erupted across Confederation space. It doesn't matter now. They're here, and they're attacking both of us. President Xantu rose from his seat, his expression resolute despite the fear visible in his eyes. What do you suggest, General? A truce, Reeves said simply, between the Alliance and the Confederation. Whatever lies in our past, whatever injustices were committed, none of it will matter if the collective succeeds. They don't conquer or occupy. They eliminate organic life entirely. Across the chamber, representatives looked to each other in silent communication. After a moment, Xantu nodded. The Confederation agrees to an immediate truce and military cooperation against this new threat. Reeves activated his communication device again. Admiral Bell, the Confederation has agreed to a joint defense. Implement Scenario 7. Throughout Confederation space, human vessels that had been positioned for potential war suddenly changed course, moving to intercept the collective ships. The galaxy that had been on the brink of civil war now faced an external threat that endangered all organic life. As the Council scrambled to organize their response, Lena caught Captain Norwood's eye across the chamber. In that moment, she understood what her grandmother had once told her about humans, that their greatest strength was not their technology or their adaptability, but their ability to set aside differences when facing a common enemy. The true test of both civilizations was about to begin. The Battle of Proxima Centauri would later be remembered as the turning point in the collective war. 3 days after the appearance of the Silicate Collective, both human and Confederation forces had suffered heavy losses. The machine intelligence had targeted major population centers and strategic military installations with ruthless efficiency. Aboard the human flagship Redemption, Admiral Susan Bell stood before a mixed group of human and Confederation officers. The command center buzzed with activity as tactical displays showed the movements of both Allied and enemy forces throughout the sector. The collective vessels are converging on Proxima Centauri, Bell explained, indicating the star system on the main display. Our analysts believe they're targeting the Jumpgate network hub there. If they capture it, they'll have rapid access to 17 major systems. Lena Marsh studied the tactical display with growing concern. Proxima Centauri was one of the oldest human colonies, established even before the exile. Now it was a major Confederation transportation hub with a population of over 30 million. Their attack pattern is consistent with previous engagements, added General Reeves, standing at Bell's side. The initial hostility between the two human leaders had been set aside in the face of the greater threat. They disable communications first, then target defense systems, and finally deploy their harvest ships. Captain Norwood frowned. Harvest ships. The collective doesn't just destroy organic life. Reeves explained grimly. It collects biological material for study and experimentation. We believe they're attempting to understand and replicate organic consciousness. A chill ran through the assembled officers. Grand Marshal Thrix, who had been surprisingly cooperative since the Alliance formed, growled softly. We cannot allow them to take Proxima, he stated, not only for strategic reasons, but for the population. Agreed, Bell said, which is why we're deploying our combined fleet there. This will be our first major coordinated offensive. The plan was bold but dangerous. Human vessels, with their superior defensive capabilities, would engage the collective ships directly. Confederation forces, with their greater numbers and maneuverability, would protect the civilian evacuation and target any collective harvest ships that broke through the human line. As the officers dispersed to prepare their forces, Lena found herself walking alongside a human science officer named Ben Harris. He had been quiet during the briefing, but his troubled expression caught her attention. "Something's bothering you," she observed. Harris glanced around to ensure they wouldn't be overheard. "The collective strategy doesn't make sense," he said quietly. "Their movements are too predictable, almost as if they want us to concentrate our forces at Proxima," Lena finished, the realization striking her suddenly. Harris nodded. "I've been analyzing their attack patterns. They're an artificial intelligence with presumably perfect strategic capabilities, yet they're making obvious moves that any first-year tactical student would recognize. We need to tell Admiral Bell," Lena said urgently. They rushed back to the command center, but it was too late. The combined fleet was already departing for Proxima Centauri, leaving only a skeleton defense around SciFiPrime and other core worlds. "We need to speak with whoever's in charge," Harris insisted to a junior officer. "That would be me," said a voice behind them. They turned to find Eric Jones, the Alliance intelligence officer who had visited Lena on the Starlight. "Jones," Lena said with relief, "we think the collective is trying to draw our forces to Proxima Centauri. It could be a trap." Jones led them to a small tactical room where they could speak privately. "Explain," he said simply. Harris quickly outlined his analysis of the collective's movements. "They're being too obvious. An intelligence sophisticated enough to challenge both our civilizations wouldn't make such basic tactical errors unless they wanted us to respond in a specific way." Jones considered this, then activated a secure communication channel. "Give me Admiral Bell." The Admiral's face appeared on the screen, the background showing she was already aboard her vessel en route to Proxima. "This better be important, Jones," she said tersely. Jones explained their concerns. Bell listened without interruption, her expression growing more troubled. "If you're right," she said finally, "what's their real target?" "The most logical target would be where both our governments are currently concentrated," Lena suggested. "SciFiPrime." Bell was silent for a moment, then nodded. "I'll divert a portion of our forces back to SciFiPrime, but we can't abandon Proxima either. Those civilians need protection." "Admiral," Harris interjected, "the collective must have known we'd eventually detect the strategy. They're planning for our countermove as well." "Then what do you suggest?" Bell asked, frustration evident in her voice. "Something unexpected," Harris replied. "Something no strategic AI would anticipate, because it wouldn't be the logical choice." A slow smile spread across Jones's face. "I think I know just the thing." The collective's attack on Proxima Centauri began exactly as predicted. Their ships, strange geometric forms that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. They numbered over 100, each more powerful than the most advanced Confederation vessel. Waiting for them was a combined human Confederation fleet, arranged in defensive positions around the planet and its orbital installations. Admiral Bell's flagship led the human vessels at the front, while Marshal Frick's forces protected the civilian evacuation transports. The battle began with an exchange of long-range weapons fire. Collective beams of energy that disrupted matter at the quantum level lanced out toward the defenders. Human vessels absorbed or deflected most attacks with their advanced shielding, while Confederation ships performed evasive maneuvers, some successfully, others not. From the command deck of the Redemption, Admiral Bell watched the engagement with intense focus. "Status of Operation Blindside?" she asked without taking her eyes from the tactical display. "Jones reports they're in position," her communications officer replied. "Awaiting your signal." Bell nodded. "Tell them to proceed." Meanwhile, light years away, a small force of 5 vessels approached the collective's command ship. This massive construct had remained hidden at the edge of map space, coordinating the attacks but never engaging directly. Until now, its location had been unknown. The 5 ships were an unlikely mix. 2 human scout vessels, a Confederation science ship, a private trading vessel, and Lena Marsh's small research craft. None were military vessels. None would register as threats to the collective sensors. Aboard Lena's craft, Eric Jones monitored their approach. "The collective is completely focused on the battle at Proxima," he reported. "Their defenses here are minimal. They never expected us to find the command ship," Ben Harris added, "much less attack it with non-military vessels." Captain Norwood, who had volunteered to lead this desperate mission, checked the status of the special payload they carried. "Quantum Disruptor is at full charge. We'll only get one shot at this." The Quantum Disruptor was a human weapon designed specifically to combat the collective, rather than attacking the physical structure of the target. It disrupted the quantum linkages that allowed the machine intelligence to function as a unified entity. As they closed on the command ship, its automated defenses finally detected them and began to respond. Energy beams lashed out, destroying one of the human scout ships instantly. "We need to get closer," Norwood urged. "The disruptor won't be effective at this range." Lena pushed her small research vessel to its limits, diving toward the massive collective ship. Warning alarms blared as systems overheated and structural integrity weakened. 300 kilometers, Harris counted down. 200, 100. A defensive beam struck the Confederation science vessel, splitting it in two. The trading ship veered away, its captain losing nerve at the last moment. "We're in range," Harris shouted, firing disruptor. From Lena's ship, a pulse of energy unlike any conventional weapon surged toward the collective command ship. There was no explosion, no visible damage, just a ripple of distortion that passed through the massive vessel. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, slowly, the lights on the collective ship began to flicker and die. Its perfect movements became erratic, then ceased entirely. "It worked," Jones said in amazement. "The quantum linkages are collapsing. The collective intelligence is fragmenting." Across the galaxy, at Proxima Centauri and a dozen other battlefields, collective vessels suddenly lost coordination. Some went dormant, others moved in random patterns, firing at empty space or even at each other. The combined fleet, though battered, seized the opportunity. Under Admiral Bell and Marshal Thrix's joint command, they systematically disabled or destroyed the now disorganized enemy forces. 2 weeks later, representatives from both the Human Alliance and Confederation gathered in the Grand Council chamber on Centauri Prime. The mood was solemn but hopeful. The collective threat had been neutralized, though at great cost. Millions had died, worlds had been devastated, and both civilizations faced years of rebuilding. Admiral Bell and President Xantu signed the Centauri Accords, a formal peace treaty and alliance between humanity and the Confederation. The document acknowledged the historical injustice of humanity's exile, established reparations for human worlds that had been appropriated, and created a new interstellar government, the Galactic Union. 3 centuries ago, Bell said after the signing, fear drove our civilizations apart. Today, we have proven that together, we are stronger than any force that threatens us. In the weeks that followed, human technology began to spread throughout Confederation space. The most significant contribution was a restoration protocol, a revolutionary technology designed to accelerate planetary healing and atmospheric stabilization. Worlds damaged by the collective would recover in decades rather than millennia. For Lena Marsh, the end of the crisis brought new beginnings. She was appointed to lead a joint Human Confederation scientific initiative, exploring the integration of the two civilizations' technologies. Captain Norwood, promoted to admiral for his role in the final battle, would command the first mixed-species fleet. As Lena stood on the observation deck of the newly christened research station Unity, she watched shuttles moving between human and Confederation vessels in orbit, engineers, scientists, and diplomats from both civilizations working together to build something new. Ben Harris joined her at the viewport. "Your grandmother will be proud," he said quietly. "She survived the exile to build a bridge between our peoples." "I wish she could have seen this," Lena replied. Humans returning not as conquerors, but as partners. Below them, Centauri Prime gleamed in the light of its sun. The planet that had once been the capital of a confederation that exiled humanity was now the center of a new galactic civilization, one built on the understanding that diversity and unity were not opposing forces, but complementary strengths. "They believed humans were long gone," Harris said, echoing the phrase that spread throughout the galaxy when the human armada first appeared. Instead, we came back just in time to save them. To save each other, Lena corrected gently. That's the lesson we all needed to learn. As night fell across SciFiPrime, lights from 1,000 ships, human and Confederation alike, shone in the darkness of space, beacons of a new era where ancient enemies had become essential allies. The stars that had once seemed to separate them now connected them in a shared destiny, the beginning of a golden age that would be remembered for millennia to come. The stars shimmered against the dark canvas of space as a Confederation patrol ship glided to the Orion sector. Inside the vessel, Admiral Zivok stood with his 4 arms clasped behind his back, his scaled skin reflecting the blue glow of the command console. The old Trilaxian officer had seen many things in his 200 years of service, but never a human. "Tell me again about the humans, Admiral," said Cadet RR, her antenna twitching with curiosity. "The ones from the old stories." Zivok smiled, showing rows of blunt teeth. Young cadets always wanted to hear about humans. They had become like mythical creatures, dangerous yet fascinating. "Humans were unlike any species we've encountered," he began, his voice deep and rhythmic. "They stood on 2 legs, had only 2 arms, and their skin was soft and vulnerable. Yet they spread across the stars faster than any race before them." The bridge crew pretended not to listen, but Zivok knew they were just as interested as a cadet. Humans had been gone for 3 centuries, but their legend lived on. They were violent, he continued, their history filled with war. But they were also brilliant builders and dreamers. The translator technology we use today, based on human designs. The faster-than-light drive improvements, human innovation. "What happened to them?" asked another young cadet who had joined the small gathering. Zivok sighed. "The Great Plague. It started on their homeworld, Earth. The Confederation quarantined the entire system, but it was too late. The plague spread to their colonies. The last human outpost went silent 297 years ago. The truth was more complex, but this was a story everyone knew. Historians and scientists studied the abandoned human stations and outposts, picking through the remains of a vanished civilization. Museums displayed human artifacts, books made of actual paper, primitive projectile weapons, clothing items, and art. Traders and collectors paid small fortunes for authentic human relics. "Sir," called out the censor officer, interrupting the impromptu history lesson, "we're picking up unusual energy readings from Outpost 47. The Admiral moved to the main console. Outpost 47 was an automated research station in a remote system monitoring cosmic radiation. It wasn't supposed to generate any significant energy output. Probably just a malfunction," Zivok said. "Make a note to send a maintenance crew when we return to base." The censor officer nodded, but looked troubled. "Sir, the pattern is structured. It doesn't match any known malfunction signature. Log it and continue patrol," Zivok ordered. Strange sensor readings were common in this region of space. The Orion sector had always been filled with anomalies. One reason humans had been interested in it centuries ago. 3 weeks later and 12 systems away, Lena Marsh sat alone in her laboratory on Station Nexus 7. The half-human scientist was something of a curiosity herself. Her grandmother had been among the last known humans, who had fallen in love with a Centaurian diplomat before the quarantine. Mixed-species children were rare, and Lena's partial human heritage made her an object of scientific interest. Her dark hair was pulled back from her face, revealing the subtle blue markings along her temples, the only visible sign of her Centaurian blood. At 53 years old, she looked younger than most humans would at that age, another gift from her mixed genetics. Lena stared at the data patterns on her screen. For months, she had been detecting strange signals at the edge of map space. The Confederation Science Council dismissed her findings as background radiation or sensor errors. But Lena knew better. Her grandmother had passed down stories, knowledge, and codes from the old days. Before humans disappeared, they had developed communication protocols that no other species had fully understood. And these signals matched those protocols exactly. Someone was using human communication methods. and that someone was moving closer to Confederation space. Lena downloaded the data to a portable device and left her lab. She needed to speak with someone who would listen. The central hall of Station Nexus 7 bustled with activity. Various species from across the Confederation moved through the space. Tall, willowy Aldarians with their flowing garments, bulky Taurians with their characteristic heavy steps, translucent Medusan diplomats floating slightly above the floor. Lena pushed her way through the crowd toward the administrative offices. Station Director Greg Powell was one of the few people who took Lena's research seriously. Like her, he had human ancestry, though more distant. His great-great-grandfather had been human. It created a bond between them in a galaxy where human blood was increasingly rare. She found him in his office, reviewing supply manifests. "Director Powell, I need to speak with you," Lena said without preamble. Greg looked up, his green eyes, another human trait, focusing on her face. "Dr. Marsh, please sit down." Lena placed her data device on his desk and activated it. A three-dimensional pattern of signals appeared in the air between them. "I've been tracking these signals for 3 months," she explained. "They're getting stronger and more frequent, and they're using old human military communication protocols.